The state lawmakers applauded the president when he said he would keep national security at the expense of an unbalanced budget. They applauded him again when he talked about eliminating the inheritance tax. And again when he talked about getting government back to the people and federal programs back to the state. But while the lawmakers were pleased with what the president said, many of them were less pleased by what he did not say. His remarks on his new federalism were vague and did not answer any of the questions that the lawmakers wanted answered.
Working out details for such a change of direction is never easy. Perhaps a starting point for the dialogue can be the broad proposal that I outlined during my State of the Union message. Briefly, it suggests the transfer of 45 categorical programs to the states, along with the funding sources and authority to manage them. The list includes everything from education to community development, from transportation to social services. What I've described as the centerpiece of the federalism initiative is the almost dollar-for-dollar swap of the two largest areas of welfare. The federal government would take on the cost of Medicaid, and in exchange, the states would assume the responsibility and authority for aid to families with dependent children and food stamps.
Governor Nye said he had heard it all before. Senator Randall of Tulsa called the speech good, but said it didn't address the questions the legislators were concerned with. All in all, many legislators feel the president's speech was long on statesmanship, but short on substance.
With optimism, self-pride, and rugged independence.
Oklahoma Gas and Electric received the $54 million rate hike last October. At that time, the Corporation Commission told the utility to collect the extra dough by charging all of its customers an extra 10%. But yesterday, the Commission authorized OG&E to charge its residential customers an additional 4%. Industrial customers like General Motors will get a 5% price break. That means residential customers will be paying about 14% more for electricity this year than last year. Industrial users will only have to fork over an extra 5% above a year ago. That may not sound fair, but OG&E says the new rate structure is necessary to make up for past inequities.
The residential customer has not been seeing really the full cost of electricity. So the attempt on the part of the Commission was to reflect the true cost of electricity, and it's just simply a levelizing in that rate of return.
The latest price jump will increase a typical $50 electric bill by about $2. Scott Wallace, Action 4, Northwest Oklahoma City.
Agriculture is America's #1 industry, employing some 23 million people in the food production chain. Its assets total more than $1 trillion, and that equals all the combined assets of other industries. Agricultural leaders appear on Channel 4's early morning hour-long newscast almost daily.
Of course, we like to say one thing about it, that if you eat, you're involved in agriculture, so we want to keep that in mind.
And we're going to be doing some of that this morning.
You bet.
About 20 agriculture leaders from across the state joined us for breakfast commemorating Agriculture Day. President Reagan greeted this special day by saying agriculture is a critical element of the American economy. He also asked Americans to join him in thanking the people who make our agricultural system the success it is. Ben McCain, Action 4.
Federal investigators have found highway bid rigging to be a common practice in several states, and fear it may be going on here in Oklahoma. Most state highway projects are granted to the lowest bidder. The state makes the decision and offers the job to the construction company with the best bid. Bid rigging allows construction officials to predetermine which company will be offered the job. Here's how it works. Suppose each of these three men own or operate a highway construction company. When they hear the state is asking for bids on a new highway project, all three get together to discuss who should offer the lowest bid and get the job. Say the man in the gray suit says his company would like to do the job and will bid low. The other two construction officials agree to offer high bids, provided the favor is returned when another highway project is announced later on. Perhaps that low bidder remembers a fourth construction official who may also have an interest in the project. He is contacted by phone and also agrees not to offer a low bid. That settles it. The state bidding system has been foiled, and these four men decide what to bid and who gets the job.
It's possible in any phase of life for people to concur or collaborate or whatever on bidding, not just contractors, any private walk of life. You might wonder something like that, but I don't have any evidence to rely on that would confirm any suspicion I might have. I'm open-minded. Of course, I hope it hasn't been going on here, but I have no basic knowledge to know whether it has or not.
Whether Ward and the Transportation Department have been undercut by unscrupulous contractors is what the Justice Department and the grand jury hope to find out. Some of the companies already convicted for bid rigging in Kansas have also done highway work in Oklahoma. Circumstantial evidence, but conceivably the state of Oklahoma may have already lost millions of dollars to highway bid rigging. Larry Otis, Action 4, Transportation Department.
And the last one that'll round out the team for this year will be related. The Diamond Group, Yorkin, Diamond Group for the United. Pardon me? With the routine.
That they were auctioning off these husbands. These folks know, Darren. We're among friends. You said they had the interview this afternoon. They sent us to our room, and then they moved. It looks like they've got it under control, but these three on the other, they're having a hard time of it. Look.
Two and a half months ago, the last citation rolled off GM's assembly line in Oklahoma City. The plant has been shut down since then for two reasons: to allow time to retool for GM's new A-body cars, and to give GM a chance to unload some of its slow-selling citations and Phoenixes. While auto workers in Oklahoma City and other towns have remained off the job, union and management representatives have been meeting in Detroit trying to negotiate a new concessions contract. After a marathon meeting last night, both sides agreed on a contract which would save GM some $3 billion and protect the jobs of thousands of auto workers. Under the agreement, GM employees would receive profit sharing and increased job security. The auto workers would give up cost of living allowance increases, and wages would be frozen until 1984. Local union officials won't be ready to pass judgment on the tentative contract until they've had a chance to study it.
If the agreement is similar to Ford's, and I think that the big key is the profit-sharing agreement. If the agreement is similar to the one at Ford, and we already know that the profit-sharing is not the same, I would be inclined to say it's a good agreement. But not knowing what this profit-sharing agreement says and knowing basically what the Ford agreement says, that's where my reservations lie, is what I'm saying.
Campbell will fly to Detroit later this week to find out more about the proposed settlement. Oklahoma City's 5,400 GM auto workers will get a chance to vote on the proposed agreement April 4th. Scott Wallace, Action 4 in Midwest City.
Chances are many of the fish you've caught in state waters came from the Tishomingo fish hatchery. 3 million fish and 15 species spawn in the hatchery's 67 ponds each year. The fish are stocked in hundreds of ponds and lakes in Oklahoma and 6 other states. The Tishomingo hatchery is one of 5 in Oklahoma and the only one federally funded. In less than 7 months, there will be no funds for this hatchery or the 31 other federal warm water hatcheries in the Southwest.
The 3 to 5 million fish a year that we supply to Oklahoma and other states will either have to be supplied by the state hatcheries or not supplied at all if the states are unable to fill the gap. Sport fishermen could notice the difference, especially in new reservoirs, new construction of that nature, Bureau of Reclamation reservoirs, Corps of Engineers reservoirs. Those are usually stocked by the Fish and Wildlife Service and the state.
Mr. Hort says the state could take the hatchery over, but that's unlikely since the operation doesn't turn a profit. But for the people of Tishomingo, what matters is losing a town landmark of 50 years.
It's not the hatchery so much. When we lose it, we never get it back. And we've lost something that we won't have here anymore for people to come and visit. I think it's one of the grandest things for Tishomingo that we have right now, except Murray College.
The people of Tishomingo have begun a letter-writing campaign to their elected officials to save the hatchery. But if their efforts fail, the hatchery will quietly and suddenly become a part of Oklahoma history. Brian Gill, Action 4 in Tishomingo.
Emergency crews were notified by a passerby that an accident had occurred. The driver had gotten out of his car to remove a twisted guardrail from Britton Road and saw the vehicle nestled under the I-35 overpass. Police say the car flew down this embankment, plunging its driver into the opposite embankment. Amcare attendants found the victim remarkably attentive, considering the impact the man had suffered. At the scene, rescue workers feared his condition was worse than it appeared, but those fears were unfounded. By the time he arrived at Baptist Hospital, he was in stable condition. A search of the wrecked vehicle gave the police the identity and possible destination of the driver. He is Airman Terry Moore, and officers believe he was on his way to Tinker Air Force Base when the accident occurred. The police won't know what really happened until they talk with Moore, but they do believe he was intoxicated. Sherry Sellers, Action 4.
The transfusion of blood was probably the first successful attempt in medical history at taking something out of one human and making it work in another. Technology has come a ways since then, and now doctors can do it with various organs and fluids. But donation of organs, like the donation of blood, is not mandatory. However, a bill passed by both houses and sent on to the governor for his signature would have required the removal of the pituitary gland and the corneas from the eyes during an autopsy, without permission of the deceased's next of kin. A co-author of the bill says it's necessary.
They have a waiting list of over 200 people who have bad eyesight, cannot see. And so this will put a tissue from the cornea to a beneficial use.
To allow a physician to remove body parts from a deceased person without anybody's consent whatsoever, to me, is just a violation of our basic personal rights and liberties.
Opponents of the bill also worry about the implications. If you can legislate the removal of the small pituitary gland embedded deep inside the head, what would stop legislation allowing the removal of the heart, liver, or kidneys?
Not speaking for or against the bill that's before the governor right now, I think that I can say that that bill could never be expanded to include kidneys. And the reason for that is that the cornea, and in this case the pituitary, can be removed after the heart has ceased functioning. That is, they can be removed in the autopsy room. The kidney cannot be removed in that manner and be viable.
The questions here are ones of individual rights. Does an individual have the right of access to the organs necessary for him to lead a normal life, as opposed to the rights of the individual to take it with him? The whole question may be a moot point for now, because this afternoon, Governor Nye vetoed the organ acquisition bill. But we better keep it in the backs of our minds, because as transplant technology advances, the issue is bound to come up again. Ted Brown, Action 4.
This was the scene on that terrible Tuesday. At 15 minutes past noon, a water heater in the Star Elementary cafeteria exploded. Debris from the blast rained down on children and teachers eating lunch inside the building. The final toll now stands at 7 dead, 33 injured. Investigators knew right away the cafeteria's water heater had ruptured, but they weren't sure why. Today, State Fire Marshal Jack Sanders released his official report on what caused the water heater to explode. He explained that 2 of 3 safety devices on the heater had been tampered with, apparently by school maintenance workers.
The continuous buildup, the burner continued to fire. The temperature relieving device was simply not there to relieve the heat. The continuous buildup of heat eventually caused the tank to rupture, spilling the superheated water that turned to steam, and the tremendous expansion of that water is what resulted in the shock wave that presented the explosion.
The fire marshal's report cites 4 factors which had some bearing on the accident. The investigation revealed there was no preventive maintenance program in place or in practice. The supervision of maintenance crews to determine quality of work and field practices was inadequate. The lack of in-service training for maintenance crews permitted practices that are not in the best interest of safety and performance of equipment. And warehousing of valves and controls at the maintenance center was done in a manner that increased the possibility of damage to those parts. Today's announcement didn't break a lot of new ground. The state experts' findings merely confirmed what had already been speculated about the cause of this explosion. However, the experts' investigation is certain to increase the number of already mounting civil lawsuits filed by relatives of people hurt in this tragedy. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at Star Elementary School. Jerry Carter's co-workers gave up the green willingly tonight. They know their dollars will help out a friend in time of need. It wasn't exactly Ernest Tubbs. Instead, the men and women waltzed to the strains of the Summit Ridge Band. Both the band and the Elks Lodge in Midwest City will go unpaid tonight. With no overhead, all of tonight's proceeds will go to the Carter family.
Basically, just a group of people wanting to do something in some way to help the family out, and so we realized there's going to be a lot of expense, with this type of thing, and so that is what we're here to do.
The money raised tonight could wind up in the reward fund, which has been set up to catch Tammy Carter's killer. If the proceeds help put the slayer behind bars, then these jitterbuggers will really have something to dance about. Scott Wallace, Action 4 in Midwest City.
Every marriage has its ups and downs, but for the sensational Lees, it's part of their daily routine, thanks to this space wheel.
I'm the inventor's protege, and I began in 1961 by quitting school, where I was going to school at Florida State University, marrying my wife, and running away to South America with an international unit of the Ringling Brothers Barnum Family Circus.
He gave me a call one day, and he said, "Hey, how would you like to get married and go to South America on a honeymoon with Ringling Brothers Circus?"
And I bought this apparatus from the inventor, and I've been going around in circles ever since.
The most widely imitated but never duplicated act of its kind in the circus today. On the giant space wheel from the United States, the sensational Lees.
In the beginning, Lee did the wheel on his own with a counterweight riding shotgun. One day it was discovered that Nancy weighed the same as the counterbalance, so being much prettier, she joined the act. An act which has been together for 22 years, touring the United States and the world. They've ridden the wheel in Europe, South America, and New Zealand twice. Lee and Nancy feel it's the best of two worlds, getting paid money to go places people pay money to go. But they deserve every cent they're paid. The two perform death-defying acts some 50 feet in the air without the help of any safety device.
Like Captain Nemo said, we've had a lot of incidents, but very, very few accidents. It's like driving a car. Most of our accidents happened the first few years we were in the business, when perhaps we didn't have the proper respect for what we're doing and concentration necessary for survival.
Despite her husband's confidence, Nancy worries about his safety. At the end of the act, Lee executes a thrilling run through space. Watching the act from below for 22 years is taking its toll on his wife's nerves. She now looks forward to retirement, but not so much to quit. The sensational Lees will end when it stops being fun, they stop being good, and the act stops making money. Sherry Sellers, Action 4 at the Shrine Circus.
Sensational Lees.
Edmond police say either more money or longevity pay for officers is what they want to hear from city negotiators. The current contract ends June 30th. City officials are offering a 9% pay hike, and police are asking for 15%. The city has said that longevity pay, which is a bonus to officers serving more than 3 years, is out of the question, and that 9% is the city's final offer. After a brief meeting this morning, both sides, it was time to take the city's offer to the police membership for a vote. But police negotiators say unless the city does better, it can expect a lot of turnover.
We have quality officers. All of them have education. All of them are working towards education. We have an excellent police department, and the only way you're going to keep excellent people, good people, is if you pay them. And our officers just are not being paid enough to live in the city of Edmond.
Edmond police negotiators don't expect the membership will accept a 9% pay increase. If the two sides don't come closer together at their next meeting, they'll have to call in a mediator or an arbitrator. In any event, police say a strike won't even be considered. Ed Stewart, Action 4 in Edmond. City council members listened to those for and against expansion of a home for battered women and their children. The home, called the Passage Shelter, wants to buy another house next door to accommodate more battered victims. But residents in the area say another shelter would only breed trouble and be unsafe for those who live there.
I'm the gentleman that has the trouble with the children. There is a garage. I have a garage and lean-to where I've had to run children off of that several times. I purposely asked them where they lived, and they told me the house up on the corner.
The council denied the request to buy another house for battered women, which disappointed supporters like the YWCA. And supporters say opponents never did have any valid reasons.
Children is not a valid argument. Our situation is that there are lots of times when we think probably we could better serve women if we had more spaces for them rather than trying to take care of their children. But they are part of everyone's life, and they need to be there, and they're not a nuisance to the neighborhood at all.
This is the Passage Shelter. Its location must remain anonymous for the protection of the women and children here. The women say this home has made the difference between life and death.
My babies were hungry and I could come to the shelter. There was nothing left in my house to feed my babies till I came here to get help. And I'm not saying this because people are looking at me. I just feel that I should say what's right. You tried to my kids' health. They was hungry. Their dad would take their money and go get a drug because that's all he could do.
Yes, and
I hold down 2 or 3 jobs for what? To have everything taken away from me because I'm a woman?
No more than 15 people are allowed to stay here at any one time. That number includes both women and children. Organizers say that all safety precautions imaginable have been taken care of. A stay here normally lasts about 4 or 5 days depending on a person's situation, but never longer than 30 days at a time. In many cases, battered families come back 2 or 3 times until they are finally able to start a life of their own again.
The women who operate this shelter couldn't understand why the council denied their request for more room. They feel that the council does know there is a problem. For every 1 woman accepted here, the women say that 4 are rejected because there isn't enough room. Although they did suffer a slight defeat today, they say they'll still be looking for more room because the number of battered women continues to increase in Oklahoma City. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
Just driving through the neighborhood, you wouldn't expect that kind of thing to go on here. But last week, 5 people were arrested on various charges, boiling down to the operation of a house of prostitution. More police say they've known of the house's alleged operation since October.
Well, I have received calls from the persons living in that area, and it was a very nice neighborhood, and I can understand their concern. And I did talk to some of the people in that area prior to this, to the raid, and they helped me, assisted me quite a bit.
People living nearby the house have mixed reactions to the arrests.
What do you think of that kind of alleged activity, I guess, going on in a residential neighborhood?
Well, I think it's terrible, alleged or otherwise. Oh, it goes on in every kind of neighborhood all over the world. I don't think anything about it at all. I don't think it's any big deal. I'd hate to canvass door to door and see how many things like that have gone on or might go on. This may inspire people to things. I don't know.
A neighborhood teenager says he mowed the establishment's lawn all last summer and noted some suspicious activity.
I seen the picture in the paper about it, and you know, I knew something funny had been going on. One time after finishing their lawn, went and knocked on the door so they could pay me, right? And so that lady answered the door, and she was in a see-through nightgown. And my God, everything was showing just about. I mean, you could see everything, and I was just sitting there talking to her going, you know?
The 5 people arrested are out on bond. Police say some of them may still be living in the house, and indeed this car pulled out of the driveway while we were there. But police also say they are keeping an eye on the place to make sure no other questionable activity goes on. Ted Brown, Action 4 and more.
Pipelines like this carry millions of cubic feet of gas a day. Like everything else, the price of this gas has gone up. For you and me, that means an increase on our bill. The average consumer will pay $8.30 more a year. That's 69 cents more a month. A spokesman for the Oklahoma Natural Gas Company says the reason for the increase is one we're all familiar with.
The reason for the increase is about the same as it has been for the past several rate increases. The number one reason is inflation, the effects of inflation on the company. The second reason is the increased investment that ONG has had to make in the utility to provide the gas service.
The increase in cost of the gas service will be equally divided between residential and industrial ratepayers. Together they'll pay $21 million in boosted rates, but things could be worse. The Corporation Commission rejected an increase that would have cost almost 4 times as much. Sherry Sellers, Action 4.
Everything looking good at Mach 1 at 50,000 feet, range 27 miles.
If you're wondering where the...
3.5 minutes from touchdown. 13 miles range.
Looks beautiful, doesn't it?
Turning right now into runway 17.
They're in the right turn.
At 20,000 feet.
To, in a moment, straighten out and be lined up with the landing runway.
Ranged at 288. Still an auto.
50 feet, gear coming.
Comes the gear.
Gear down, 20. 10, 5, 4, touchdown. No gear, 10. No gear, 5, 4, 3, 2, touchdown. Bienvenidos, amigos.
Well, there it is, Vance. I got...
Convoy 1, Columbia, reach your land clear, help me. Welcome home. Area 5, square 2.
There are still in the spacecraft some toxic and some lethal fluids that have to be handled with some care.